Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Lately there's been a bit of an uptick in blue-red Delver, so not the Teamer or the Grixis, but just straight up blue-red Delver. So I thought it was time to investigate and see how this deck works and feels. Obviously blue-red Delver was like the deck to beat a while ago, but things have changed a lot since then with people playing other colours, and there is a version of Delver that runs just Questing Druid as its only off-colour card in the main deck, and you're basically just using it for Seek the Beast. But this doesn't really have that sort of card advantage suite. We're more into like the classic tempo-y style of Delver. So, we got some threats. So we got classic Delvers, Dragon's Rage Channelers, and 4 Murktide Regents. So that's basically how we're trying to win the game. Stick a little threat on turn 1 and ride it to victory. To do so, we've got more countermagic than you'd normally expect. So we've got our 4 Forces, our 4 Dazes, we've got a couple of counterbalances, and a Force of Negation. So we've got a lot of tools here to try and suppress what our opponent's doing. If anything does get into play, we've got a couple of Unholy Heats, we've got 4 Lightning Bolts, and we've got a Brazen Borrower. So we've got a lot of ways of dealing with some stuff once it makes it into play, past our enormous counterspell suite. And the rest of the deck is cantrips. We've got our Brainstorms, we've got our Ponders, we've got our Baubles. Baubles obviously very good with the Dragon's Rage Channeler here, and also pretty good with our Counterbalance. So that's pretty much it. One of the reasons why I think this deck has ticked up a little bit is actually because of Thundering Falls. So we get to run a 5th Volcanic Island, sort of. But in the past, people were running things like Steam Vents, but Thundering Falls is just a really good thing that you can go and fetch with a fetch land and just get a nice little bit of extra value. It can load our graveyard up for Murktide Regent, it can check for Counterbalance, so we can do this in response to a Counterbalance trigger, and we can get a little bit of extra value that way. It just seems like a really nice extra thing to have here. Obviously, we've got our 4 Wastelands as well, because why not? And we do get to run a basic island in this deck, which a lot of the time we're not going to want. But when we do want it, it's going to be really important that we have it. As for the sideboard, well, that basic island I mentioned is because we're playing Blood Moon. So we can just Blood Moon our opponents and really set them back. And probably have enough time to just win the game that way. The one issue I will say with Blood Moon is that we can't cast a Murktide Regent underneath a Blood Moon. So we have to get our Murktide Regents down before our Blood Moon. But we can still pitch them to Force of Will and stuff, so they do have some text even if we can't play them, just by being blue. On top of this, in our sideboard, we've got 3 Grafdigger's Cage, because the scam decks are the real deal, like the Rescaminator decks, so we need to stop that in their tracks. So that's what this is for. We've got some more countermagic in Force of Negation and Hydroblast and Pyroblast. And we've got another catch-all in Brazen Borrower to bounce some stuff, or just have an additional threat in our deck if we need to increase our threat density. And we've got a couple of Meltdowns for all the artifact decks. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just good old-fashioned delvering, really. We're quite tempo-oriented. We don't really have like a big card advantage engine, although Counterbalance can kind of work like that in a prison piece and give us virtual card advantage by making our opponent's cards blank. Alright, without further ado, remember to like and subscribe, and let's have a look at some Izzet Delver. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? Alright, so our very first opening hand is kind of jammed up by this Thundering Falls, to be honest. I don't think we can keep this one, because if we play the Thundering Falls and it gets Wastelanded, we don't have a land and we can't ponder. So we will have to mulligan this. And this is kind of the inverse problem. Not a great start to this one. Alright, this is the hand we can keep. So Murktide Regent is a problem for later. And we do need to put one other card away. Are we looking at just keeping our threats going? Or so I think the options of what we're cutting, what we're sending back, is probably either a Delver, a Daze, a Brainstorm, or a Wasteland. So what we could do is we could get our basic island and play Delver, and then just throw this Channeler back and just have a little bit of action to try and find some more colours and stuff. That is an option. But that does mean that we can't just Brainstorm into Lightning Bolts, though. This is a really tough decision to start a league off with. I think we definitely want to keep the Daze here. Are we that into Brainstorm? I think the Brainstorm is one we do want to keep. Are we that into Wasteland is the question. I think I can throw back the Wasteland and just keep the threats, because we're going to need some pressure here. Because we're not going to have the most amount of resources to keep our opponent down, so we might not be able to protect our creatures as much as if we had a couple more cards in our hand. So maybe having another creature is going to be a little bit more useful for us. Alright, opponent. A grief. Alright, so this is going to bury us pretty bad, because we've already had to mulligan 2 cards out. Now we're going to lose 1 or 2 additional cards, and this game is more or less going to be decided on turn 1, I think. But, you know, we still have, you know, good cards that we can play and get there, but we'll see. If they reanimate this right now, then I'm not going to feel great about this. All right, a Ponder. That's something, at least. So they've shuffled their library, so that's a tiny bit of good news there. We did not find another land. Are we playing out this Channeler? I think we want the Channeler so that our Dazes get better. But if we play a Channeler, they can Orcish Bowmasters it. If we play a... There are secrets that can Orcish Bowmaster, but we can at least get the Daze and get some value. So I think we are getting the Volcanic here and deploying the Channeler. This does expose us slightly to a Wasteland. But hopefully our opponent will play a spell before they Wasteland us, although they know we have a Daze in hand, so they're more likely to Wasteland us first. They might not have a Wasteland though. No Wasteland. And we're seeing a Tropical Island, so our opponent's on some sort of bug line. So we can Daze this if we want to, but there's not really any point here. Like, we make them pay 1 mana and we pick up our land, but they've already played their land, so we don't have to worry about a Wasteland that we can save with using our Daze. So, okay, they're just taking out threats. So we've got creature, land, and we're about to put an instant in there. Alright, let's begin with a Brainstorm. We don't have to worry about Orcish Bowmasters here either. Okay, we'll put this into our graveyard. This will give us a 3/3 Channeler now. Alright, we're starting to cook with gas a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we put that back Murktide and Murktide. Do we want Murktide and Murktide, or do we want... They know we've got this Daze, and they're probably just going to be playing around this Daze. So if we just put this back and play this, we can get a Thundering Falls, and then we can play the Murktide next turn. So we've got the Superior Clock, but our opponent does have 3 cards in hand. So I think our opponent is fully into sort of bug scam, because they pitched a Shoulder's Edict earlier to play the Grief, and that's not normally a card you would see in like the full-on Rescaminator build. They don't have the room for it. So I think we are looking at sort of like bug scam, possibly with a little bit more mid-range juice, and things like Witherbloom Command could be an option there. Right, so we're going to be trading blows back and forth. Let's crack this and hope they don't have a Stifle. Have I spoken into existence? I have spoken into existence. That's a classic, isn't it? Okay. Well, that's terrible news. We didn't really have an option to play around there. Yeah, we're putting up the good fight there. We are winning at present, but our opponent has 2 cards in hand, and we have some stuff that's not really doing anything in our hand right now. And we know the next card of our library is a Murktide Regent. Okay, they milled a Grief with their Undercity Sewers. Grief comes in. We take a little 3 damage here. But we have the Superior Clock. We just need to be able to race to the finish line with it. We don't have a lot of agency here. What is this? Shoulder's Edict. We can't really do anything about that. Okay, so the next card of our library, if it's a land and we can just slam this Murktide with Daze back up, that's pretty reasonable. We don't have the most amount of things to pump it, but it should be enough. Alright, we're into Ponder territory here. We've got lightning bolts and things that can clean up this Grief. Daze. Like, I guess. Our opponent's just kind of got us coming and going here. We could Daze that and get our land back, but what does that actually do for us? Very little. So, but we can draw a lightning bolt, and that buys us a lot of time here. Or an Unholy Heat is fine. I'm a little bit worried about Brainstorm type stuff here, but our opponents should just play an Orcish Bowmaster if they have one right here. So, whilst we're tapped out, I guess they know we have the Daze actually. All right, let's pass. I didn't want to play into their open mana in our turn, but they haven't tapped anything here, so we can at least try and force some action here. We've got a Daze to protect this, but the Daze isn't going to do anything looking at the amount of mana in this game. All right, so they've got a Force of Will here. Yep, so we're going to go to 3, and then we need to find another removal spell. We've got 5 more in the deck, I think, so it's not an impossibility. Our opponent's pondering. They're reanimating our Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, so they have 2 lethal threats now, so I don't believe we have any cards in our deck that help us out here. What are we going to brainstorm into? No, we can't beat 2 threats here. Alright. let's go to the sideboard. So Grafdigger's Cage is certainly not without merit here. Blood Moon against their 3-color bug deck. That feels like a reasonable place to be as well. The Counterbalance, we can hit a bunch of their 1-drop stuff quite nicely. I think we do need to keep hold of some amount of Force of Will type action. I don't know how much you want the Pyroblast. We haven't seen Murktide Regents, but if they're a scam deck, that's a likely thing they can have. So we could be looking at something like removing our things that trade 2 for 1. The jam and this sort of stuff. And then we have 3 more cuts to find. So we want to be able to hit their like Doughty Void Walkers and Griefs that they've got reanimated, that sort of jazz. I think that's pretty important. I do like Counterbalance here. Then we can trim a Bauble. I don't know if we want all of these cages. We don't want to be flooded with them. So let's just have a couple of them. And that gives us 1 more cut to try and find here. If we're bringing in the Blood Moons, maybe we can trim 1 Murktide Regent. Right, so we get to be on the play now. A little bit more land than I would like, to be honest with you. But this is a matchup where we don't want to get jammed up. An awkward hand. Like, we do have a Surveil land, that's kind of half a Ponder. So if we replace this with a Ponder, that'd be okay. And if we go to 6, this is kind of a resource. Oh, I don't really like this hand, but I think it is just about keepable for what we want. Not a fan. Right, so we're going to use one of these lands to get our non-basic first, because we know that Stifle is in our opponent's hand. Well, I don't really mind if they fight over our lands with Stifle later on, but we just want to get some land underneath us. And then next turn, we've got Wasteland. So if we count this as a spell, and we count this as like half a spell, then our hand, you know, that's about the calculations I was doing. If they want to fight over this, that's fine by me. Let's see what we find here. If we find like a cantrip or something, then we can obviously fire that off. A Blood Moon, you say. So we're going to get an island with one of these, but I think the time for that isn't now. We don't necessarily want to do this right now. We want to hold up the options to Lightning Bolt our opponent, like one of their creatures or whatever. And we can just sort of build up to this Blood Moon and maybe slam the door. I'm not sure how many basics our opponent will have in their 3-color deck. It's going to be between 0 and 1, I would imagine. Alright. Well, there's 1 basic. Shot and a Ponder from our opponent. So we're going to get our Thundering Falls, our opponent's end step. And then we can do something here. So we can shut off black mana from them with this Blood Moon, but then we'll shut off our own Murktide Regents. Okay. How do I feel about this situation? So we could bolt just to take some life off and get a Surveil here. But I think we're better off seeing if they actually want the Blood Moon taken or not. Because that'll be some information. They do not want us to have the Blood Moon. Alright, that means we were right to put it in. That gives us an enchantment for our Channeler as well, which is obviously one of the rarer types in our deck. Right, let's crack this. Let's get this Thundering Falls. Big fan of these Surveil lands, doing some work. A Ponder, yes please. This will give us a 3/3 creature. What are we looking at here? Do we want to play around a Daze? If so, what land are we playing? I don't think we're playing around a Daze here. Although our opponent does know our hand. Right. If they want a Daze here and set themselves back another turn, that's not the end of the world. We'll put this on top of our library, please. And... okay, we've got a Murktide to follow up with as well. That seems pretty good. So... I think we bury the Bauble. And then put the Murktide on top. So we draw the Grafdigger's Cage, play it this turn. Next turn we can play the Murktide. Oh, wait, no, we're still 1 shy of the... yeah, oh, yeah. If we put this in the graveyard... oh, I've stacked this Ponder wrong, haven't I? If we put this into the graveyard there, we get 3/3 on the go. That's fine. I wanted to put the Bauble up there so I could put it in. Oh, dear. All right. So we've shut down reanimate stuff. All right, a green source. We're going to see like something like a Bowmasters. Sorry, not Bowmasters. A Beanstalk. Or just pick your poison. You would like me to sacrifice an artifact. Well, I only have 1 of those. And you're pondering. All right. So we can attack our opponent's tropical island here. Yeah, if we just stacked our Ponder the other way around, we'd have a much better turn here. The joys of commentating while playing. So let's jam this and see what's on top of our library first. A Delver of Secrets. It's another threat. I do like threats here. Our opponent can have an Orcish Bowmasters, so we are incentivized to crack this now. It is worse against hand disruption, but we dodge Bowmasters. I guess we're not that bothered by Bowmasters if we're just playing a bunch of flying threats. So I think we make sure that our next threat isn't going to get hit by a discard spell. See if we can squeak over the finish line there. Alright, so we have 2 basics. Interesting. A Hydroblast, you say. Right, so now while there's no Bowmasters available, we'll do this so we can draw our card next turn. Brainstorm on top of our opponent's library. So we know there's a Delver on top, so we don't really care about the Surveil there, because we want the card on top. So we get a Delver, and we get a Daze as well. So we'll play out this land so that we can get to shuffle away the Delver card if we don't like it. We are a little bit exposed to Bowmasters here. If we just stack that Ponder the other way around, we'd probably be winning the game, or have won the game by now. Alright, a Brainstorm. This means that our Daze is probably going to be live if they play a Bowmasters, but obviously they can Daze or Force back. Alright, a Tropical Island. A Carpet of Flowers. I don't think that's our fight here. It means this Daze is unlikely to do a great deal for us. Just gives them 2 mana, so they can play Bowmasters around a Daze now. They're not doing anything with it. We don't have any more Scrylands, so we're not going to use that. Right, what have we got on top of our library? Unholy Heat. Yes, I reveal that. Will I keep this Unholy Heat in hand? Is the question. It can take out some of their guys, but it's not really what we're after. I think we're going to shuffle and get something better. Well, hopefully get something better. We do have another Blood Moon, so I will get this basic island just in case. Although I don't really want to play Blood Moon into our opponent here. Counterbalance, that's a great draw. Can really jam our opponent up and might force some action from their hand here. I'm going to attack the Thundering Falls because that's the one we'd rather bounce with a Daze. Right, we're in with a Counterbalance. We are blind flipping, but generally speaking, it means 1-drops are going to be a bit sketchy for our opponent to play. What are they going to add here? Could be black mana and just jam a Grief down us. Okay, green mana. Uro. Yeah. Do we have any 3-drops in our deck? It's just the Brazen Borrower. Is that worth giving up this information for? For a very, very... I think we do. Murktide Regent. Okay. That's a pretty big customer. Our opponent knows this is coming now. This swamp they have is very awkward for their Uros, but the Carpet Flowers can obviously do some work. How many instants and sorceries do we have here? 1. We only have 1. Alright, I think I am going to... Am I going to Lightning Bolt here? To grow our Murktide? I think so. Hydroblast? Alright, and they know this is going to resolve through the Counterbalance. Sure. It still grows the Murktide. So we lose 3 points of damage, but we do get the ability to make a bigger dragon. And it's a dinosaur then. Okay, so we take out this Lightning Bolt and this Ponder. And those are the only things that actually grow the Murktide. So after that we can just strip out some stuff to make sure we're keeping maximum Delirium for the future. Alright, the Force of Will blue card were our opponent's last 2 cards. We do not have a Daze here. We do have... Do we have Force of Wills? We boarded out our Force of Wills, right? So we're not going to reveal here. But if we do reveal our opponent... If we don't reveal, our opponent might think that we board out all of our forces. Right, I'll say no to this one. So now they're going to get their Uro on the go. And they will have the mana to pay through our Daze. And that's going to just blank all of our Insectile Aberration damage. So I think our opponent has managed to sort of get there. Their deck goes a little bit bigger than ours. And normally what you want to do against like an aggro deck or a tempo deck is be slightly bigger. And, and they've got some endgame inevitability with Uro. Obviously, if we'd have stacked our deck right earlier on, we would have been fine. Just one there. Well, I think we have to say Counterbalance, save me. Ponder. That's not going to save me. Alright, Unholy Heat does clean this up. Our opponent's back to 2 cards in hand again. Right, let's Ponder. A Lightning Bolt, a Dragon's Rage Channeler. So we play the Channeler, then the Bolt, and we actually start making progress into our opponent's life total. But we're just going to lose to this. Our Murktide Regents aren't going to be very big, so I think we just have to keep them like this. Because this will put us dealing 3 damage a turn to our opponent. So we'll be going over what the Uro does. Now the Uro is obviously going to find them extra cards, but like I said, Murktide Regent isn't going to be very large here. It's going to be like 1 bigger than our Dragon's Rage Channeler, so we may as well keep the Channeler. We've got the Bolt that we can use as a scrying thing. We know we've got 1 drop on top of our library. Alright. We'll eat it from the Uro. Next time we hit our opponent for 6. And then they go to 7. And then we hit them for 9, and then we win. So this does track maths-wise, provided our opponent doesn't have more stuff going on. But it's certainly possible they're going to have more stuff. Lorien revealed. We know the top card of our library doesn't do anything here. So we'll say no to this. We're just trying to squeak over the finish line with our creatures here. There is a Polluted Delta. We do get another look with our Lightning Bolt, and we can also use our Daze to get an additional scry off of our, surveil off of our Channeler. But if they've got some removal spells here, we're just sunk. I don't think it's worth trying to trade into this when they can just rebuy it again. Alright, let's put our opponent to 4. Maybe. There's a pause here. This is a Shoulder's Edict. It is. Okay, we're going to Lightning Bolt our opponent and see if we can get this Surveil to go. So we put this into our graveyard. We knew that was there. Right, we're going to reveal it anyway, so we may as well. A Mishra's Bauble. That's not really going to do it for us here. From this point, I don't think we come back here. Unless we could Daze this and try and get another counterbalance trigger. Right, they're going to crack their fetch here, which is another little additional point of damage, which could end up being relevant. Unlikely, though. I think we are just dead here. But if we can stop the Shoulder's Edict with this counterbalance trigger. Okay, no, I think we're just dead here. We're not going to beat this at this point. All right. The first game, we just got absolutely crushed. The second game, we punted on the ponder there. Too busy talking about stuff to actually click through it properly. And yeah, this matchup feels like it's going to be difficult. I'd much rather be on the slightly bigger control-y side in this sort of matchup. Like, sometimes we can go underneath our opponent and get them, though. But that was not the case today. All right, let's go to round 2. Our mana base is not being our friend today, so let's send this one back. Sure, let's send it back again. This is very unlikely, but okay, we'll keep this. Okay, we can't keep a Force. So we're keeping Channeler, Mishra's Bauble, Land, get rid of one of these. And we're either getting rid of the Wasteland or the Unholy Heat. What do we think is going to be more useful here? We have more like Bolt effects than we have Wasteland effects. So I think I'm going to put back the Unholy Heat. All right, we want to get our Surveil going. So, all right, we didn't get Stifled. That was the first battle. Let's get his Channeler down. Let's play this Mishra's Bauble. Let's mill off a card, potentially. Force of Will. I don't really want that right now. We're kind of low on resources. We kind of need to just get things going. I want to crack this now in case our opponent's playing Orcish Bowmasters. All right. We could have saved that potentially for a Delver to try and help us flip that. But if we just get plowed here, then... Right, an Island Cycle. So our opponent could be a blue-white control. The fact they got basics there makes me think our opponent is on like just a full-on control type thing. They didn't draw this Brainstorm because they shuffled. We've drawn a Murktide Regent. We're a little bit off of that one. I think mulliganing to 4 on a fair deck is going to be pretty hard for us to come back from. Especially since our opponent looks like they're going to be a kill all your guys, draw some cards, kill all your guys, draw some cards, win the game sort of deck. Okay. I would like to Brainstorm, please. This can go to the graveyard. This gives us Delirium. I do like this other land. I do not like this Wasteland. That's not doing anything for us here. So we put the Wasteland back, and then we put the... We have to put the Daze if we want to flip the Delver. But then we don't get to use the Daze to do anything. Which is kind of a rough one here. I think we just have to try and flip the Delver. Like, we're in a bit of a bad spot, so we need to try and get the pressure going. So if they play something like a Teferi, that's not the end of the world. Like, they can bounce one of our guys, but then we can untap, kill the Teferi, redeploy the threat sort of thing. Right, just another basic item for our opponent. Okay, yep, so holding up the Daze wouldn't have done anything anyway. So we lose our little friend, and they're going to get Ponder in to boot. So I think we probably want the counterbalance first rather than the Murktide, because our opponent is very much approaching the Supreme Verdict stage of the game. So I think we're just going to flip this guy, then we're going to counterbalance with Daze back up. Have a little bash for 3. And then next turn we can Murktide with counterbalance and Daze back up if we want to, depending on what our opponent does here. Like, they're going to be interested in removing our Insectile Aberration. Are we playing into Supreme Verdict? I don't think we can. Like, this many basics does scream to me that they're going to have a Verdict in their deck. So we hit them to 10. If we play this Murktide Regent, it'll only be a 5. So 5, 6, 7, 8. That means if we play the Murktide and we get to swing once with it, all of our burn spells are lethal. If they just go end of turn spot removal spell here, then we're going to be in trouble. I think we just have to do the Murktide. I don't like it. These decks tend not to play the most amount of Supreme Verdicts is normally like a 1 or a 2 of. Whereas they have lots of spot removal, so this plays around spot removal better. A Brainstorm. Let's see what's on top. A Lightning Bolt. Alright, so this is the line I was talking about where we can attack once and then finish them with a bolt. This also turns off plows. But if they're counterspelling this, then it's not the end of the world for us, because at least it means they haven't got a clean removal spell. Alright. They're going to get Tundra here. They are going to get a Tundra. We will be snapping this Wasteland off, given the opportunity. Dress down. Right, snap this off. Makes Supreme Verdict slightly more difficult to cast for them. We are not going to reveal this because we know the top card of our library already. We're not going to try and Daze this Dress down. So we're only going to get 3/3 here. But that's still lethal with the bolt that's on top of our library now. Not bad for a mull to 4. And putting some pressure on. Our opponent does have a full grip of cards. We don't know how close they are just to fully stabilizing here. But they could just go White Land, Supreme Verdict, and then we're just dead. But if we get to swing once more, then our chances of winning are pretty good. They've played a Plains. Okay, so Supreme Verdict is online, but they don't have it. So they're probably waiting for this Lightning Bolt to go from the top of our library and then fire off some plows into us. Alright, so there is one of these plows. What do we have here? A Brazen Borrower. It's a threat though, so that's something. I think Brazen Borrower's CMC is 5 because it. No, sorry, it's only 3. It's not like a split card. Sorry, split cards have the total mana cost. Brazen Borrower will just have 3. Ignore me musing on things. So we know this will counterspell this because we've already seen it. That's a very interesting play because now we can just Daze them. Yeah, our opponent's having the same thing. Yeah, they were getting it mixed up with a split card. All right, we managed to win on a mull to 4, so I'll take that. Our opponent is almost straight blue-white. They might have a red splash in there somewhere. So we want more threats, and we want some Pyroblasts. Daze is unlikely to be that useful here on the draw. And I don't think we're going to want these Unholy Heat, although they might be playing something like Triumph of St. Catherine, which would make the Unholy Heats better, whereas the bolts of reach. So there is a little bit of tension there. We haven't seen the Triumph of St. Catherine. We do have 2 Brazen Borrowers to get out of play, as well as the Forces, so I think we're okay going like this. Alright, once again we are struggling with mana, so let's mulligan. Once again we are struggling with mana, let's mulligan. Okay, we'll keep a hand with some land in. We'll probably get rid of one of these redundant Brainstorms. Get rid of Force of Negation. And we'll just lead off with our little Delver friend. Basic item from opponent and Ponder. Right, we do not need to go on to basics now. We have 2 lands. So let's just make sure we can cast our spells here. Let's play a threat. I think if we're pitching, we're probably pitching the Brainstorm rather than the Ponder because we don't really have anything we want to get rid of from our hand right now. Rest in peace. Is this where I want to fight? It shuts down 2/3 of our threats. But we already have a Delver in play. So if we counterspell this, we're sort of investing in the future of our other threats being good. Now, if they do this and then just plow this, we're just cooked, really. We could always, like, force the plow, but then we have to try and get there with a Delver. This doesn't materially impact us right now. I think we just let this happen, as much as that doesn't feel great. So we could Brainstorm in the upkeep to guarantee a flip here, which I think is the road we're on, given the choices we've made here. So we don't really need this other land, and then we'll put this Ponder on top. Right, then we'll crack for 3. So we could Ponder here, which I think is probably better than getting the Thundering Footfalls, although it's close here because having more blue cards is fine. This is in any order in a shuffle for me. Looking for more Delver of Secrets, more Lightning Bolts. Right, they're cycling a Lorien Revealed, presumably for another basic island. I do love their basic islands. And there it is. Swords to Plowshares. We have to defend our friend. This is the line we took by not countering this. They're forcing back. So we lose our only pressure. And a lot of the pressure in our deck doesn't actually do anything. Alright, so this will get us a Thundering Footfalls and get us a little bit deeper into our deck and hopefully find another Delver. We do have Brazen Borrowers. We have 2 of those. Those are real threats. Right, another bit of cycling of the Lorien Revealed. Another island. We'll crack this. Get our Surveil land. See if we can do anything with it. A Brainstorm. That is an above average draw, so we'll have that. Alright, deck. Do I want a 1-1 threat here? Or do I just want to shuffle? Like, the selection off of the Channeler is pretty real. I don't think we need the force here. So we'll put these 2 back. This allows us to play a Channeler. And then we can play this and shuffle away those other cards. Are we getting there with a 1-1? Unlikely. But is it the only thing we have? Yes. So we're trying to draw to 5 threats. 3 Delvers and 2 Borrowers. A Teferi. Well, well, well. Goodbye, Dragon's Race Channeler. Right, we'll just crack this for another Volk. Like, if our opponent's got back to basics, then we're just dead anyway, so. A Murktide Regent. Normally happy to see that. Not right now, though. Do I want to Lightning Bolt their Teferi, or am I just going to plan on attacking it? It'll take 2 attack steps to kill their Teferi. I think we probably just want to bolt it here. As awkward as this is, but we get the Surveil straight away. And that gives us more Surveils, but it isn't what we want now, so that can just go away. We're just looking for a specific selection of cards here. So we can hard cast a Murktide Regent, but that's going to require some number of Wastelands as mana sources. Now, Wastelands aren't doing anything other than being mana sources here. So. Alright, Energy Field. Okay, we have Brazen Borrower, so we do have an out to this. If you're unfamiliar with this combo, this prevents all damage that will be dealt to them, and it goes as soon as the card enters their graveyard, but the card isn't going to enter their graveyard because of the Rest in Peace. Alright, we're not going to bother attacking. We'll just pass here. Right, if they put like an actual win condition to play, then we'll just scoop it up. Alright, a Delver of Secrets. Part of the plan. So what we need here is a Brazen Borrower and then something we can bounce, something we can remove from our opponent. Okay, so that's a land. So if we bounce this and they don't crack this in response, we can then Wasteland it and it will put something in the graveyard and destroy the energy field. Right, we've drawn another useless man. Get in there, useless man. No point attacking, we just keep passing the turn. Right, so they've cracked this now, so we don't get to do that, and they've got a basic. Sure. The One Ring. So this will prevent the damage from the One Ring. I don't think we're coming back from that one. I think we can say no to this now. Like, there's too many things for us to deal with here. The amount of cards they're going to have. Alright, so. Our opponent is got some interesting things going on. Again, we mulliganed pretty hard, which is not what we wanted. I think this is a matchup where we can board out some amount of Wastelands here. I think I take out at least 2 Wastelands to get us these Dazes back in. How important are like some of these things? Like, we could just board out all the Wastelands for Dazes. Like, our opponent is fetching basics. Honestly, I think that's fine. That leaves us only with 14 lands, but all of our spells are just coloured lands. So they were spells, not lands. So Alright, I believe. Okay. The Brainstorm's going to have to do a little bit of work for us, but it's nice to keep a 7. Alright, we're going to have a look at what our opponent's working with here, get a tiny bit of information. We can Brainstorm an emergency, but we're not really about that. Hopefully this counterbalance can do a lot of heavy lifting for us as time goes on. Another Bauble, not really what we're after. Basic island into a ponder. That's not where we're making our fight. So let me just let that go. We're not brainstorming for velocity here. We want to see more cards. Alright. Let's brainstorm. Delver of Secrets, Dragon's Race Channeler. These are things I would very much like to have right now. Alright, so we want to keep the Bauble so we can get things going with that. What are we looking to get rid of here? I like a lot of our hand. We're not playing... We could just play the Delver and flip it. That's pretty reasonable. So if we put... The Brainstorm is the card that's going to flip our Delver. So we've got to put one card underneath that. At this moment in time, it's probably the Bolt. And then we put the Brainstorm. Wait, no, that doesn't work, does it? Because we have to use a fetch land here. So we are just getting rid of whatever we're putting back. All right, I think we're still putting back the Brainstorm right now. We just want to have high density of threats. And I think it is still the Lightning Bolt. And then we jam this down. Crack it for a Volk. Play our Channeler here. So we've got 3 types in our graveyard. We might be able to make this a 3-3 right now. Not that it really matters. Our opponent isn't dealing increments of 1. Do I want another Force of Will? Yes, I think I do actually. So we can draw this Force of Will. And then we can try and force in the counterbalance next turn. We want this force in our hand. Okay, the One Ring, that's a very forcible target. That's kind of how our opponent's trying to gas back up. So we need to avoid that if possible. Obviously, they need to spend some cards before they start gassing up, but that's what they're going to be up to here. Do I want to save our Dragon's Race Channeler? I don't think it's that important. We've got better stuff going on. There's a ponder from our opponent. I'm thinking a long while on this ponder. Alright, they finished their ponder. They chose not to shuffle. Interesting. So now we have a choice about whether we deploy the counterbalance or we're employing a threat. I think, given the fact that we're not necessarily flipping this Delver, I want to get this counterbalance down. Alright, we're in with the counterbalance. That's pretty good. So hopefully we can mess up some of our opponent's plays with this counterbalance. And if not, we've still got these Force of Wills. Pyroblast is very nice to see here. Let's get a threat going. So we can Pyroblast something like a Teferi or an Energy Field. Pyroblast being an answer to Energy Field is pretty handy. Alright, our opponent is going for a March of Otherworldly Light where X equals 1. Let's see what the counterbalance has to say about that. We've got a Force of Negation on top. Am I fighting over keeping this Delver of Secrets alive? Our opponent's got 5 cards now. I don't think we are. I think we're going to try and do some Murktides and deal bigger increments, because that Delver of Secrets, you know, is not going to be the largest of clocks. We can make a 4/4 Murktide. I'd rather protect a Murktide. So they can't play any 3-drops like Teferi this turn due to our Force of Negation on top. There is a Rest in Peace. So we know there's a Force of Negation on top. So we'll say no to this. I think we have to try and counterspell this, because the threat we have in play right now requires us to have a graveyard. This also will make our Murktide larger because we're going to be putting an instant into our graveyard. And we know they've got this One Ring kicking around over there for later as well. Alright, that worked. Back over to us. It's a shame we don't have a mana for this, but we do have the forces, so let's go blue-blue with this. Let's make a 5/5. Our opponent's pausing on this one for quite a while. We do have Force of Will available though, so we can protect it if we need to. We also have the counterbalance. And the counterbalance is a blind flip, so our opponent doesn't know what it is. Alright, so let's see what the counterbalance does first. A Daze. So I think we have to force, but that does mean they get to play the One Ring. I think we just have to try and beat around the One Ring here. Alright, we've got a 5-5, but our opponent's got Swords to Plowshares in their deck. Oh, they're just plowing us at end step. That's pretty savage. I don't think you Force of Will, though, if you have the plow. You just have the clean answer and just do the 1-for-1, and then you can protect that with the Force if that's the way you want to play it. I don't think they care about our life total, so it's not a case of they're not wanting to plow us and give us 5 life or whatever in some sort of race, because this isn't a race, it's can we get there? So they know they've got Daze on top, so this Brainstorm is fine. A Teferi that they know will resolve. Yikes. We are losing this one. Like, these sorts of control matchups are just loads of like ways of dealing with creatures aren't really what we want to be seeing. Like, we can obviously go under them and we can temper them or whatever, but most of the time I'd rather be playing the Swords to Plowshares deck in this sort of matchup. Alright, we have a Daze. We don't get to do anything with it. I think we just get rid of this Teferi now. It turns on our Daze. Starts filling up our graveyard for this Murktide to come back again. So we need a few more cards in our graveyard. This Daze could hopefully be one of them. The One Ring. Do we have any 4s in our deck? Another Daze. Well, that's pretty bad. Like, we could Daze this just to put a card in our graveyard for Murktide. But I think this game is mostly over now. So we've got this other Daze that doesn't do anything. We'll start hard casting these Dazes for the sake of it soon. We just want to put some stuff in the bin and at least have a chance of putting this Murktide into play. But by the time the ring gets up to 3 counters, we're probably dead. Like, they need Rest in Peace and Energy Field, and then we're just locked, really. Because we're not going to get through the amount of card advantage our opponent's got over there. A Polluted Delta. This gives us a Thundering Falls, which gives us a 3rd card. The Daze can be the 4th card, the Polluted Delta, the 5th card. So we can make a Murktide Regent next turn if we get a Daze target. And I will Daze any spell at this point. Right, so they drew a Terminus off of the One Ring. And decided not to Miracle for obvious reasons. A March of Otherworldly Light targeting our Counterbalance. Let's see what Counterbalance has to say about that. A Murktide Regent on top. Sure, let's cast this. They will just pay, and that is not great for us, but it's the world we're living in. We don't want this Murktide Regent on top, so we're definitely getting our Thundering Falls. Although we need to do that anyway, just so we can cast our Murktide next turn. Alright, our opponent gets to draw 3 cards this turn, which is a lot. They're drawing more cards a turn than we have in our hands altogether. So our opponent's got half of their library that they've worked through here. So they've only got half their library left. So they're so far ahead of us in that metric. And we just have nothing to show for it on board because our opponent's removal is clean and efficient. Okay. Let's see if we can get a Thundering Falls. What are we going to find here? A Ponder. Sure, I'll put it on top of my library. That's fine. That makes our Murktide bigger. I'm not expecting our Murktide to do enough here. Alright, let's Ponder. Any order, shuffle. A Lightning Bolt. Not really what I'm all about, but it's there. Okay, Murktide Regent. Time for us to gain 7 life from Swords to Plowshares. Yep, there we go. I told you it would happen. Alright. So as soon as they find an energy field, that jams us up a fair bunch. Because the One Ring will no longer be hurting them in their upkeep. And if they have the Rest in Peace alongside it, we're going to need something like a Brazen Borrower in order to get anywhere. They can't just run out an energy field without the... yikes. I was going to say, we could Daze this for our Thundering Falls, or we could save this Daze for Brainstorm. I think I'm going to save it for Brainstorm. So we could... Like, they could run out just an energy field thing, but the problem is when they go to their cleanup, they'll discard a bunch of cards and it'll die. So they do need to have the Rest in Peace going first. Right, they've got a Tundra. Plussing their Teferi. Playing another copy of the One Ring. Are they keeping this one? Okay, they are. They don't want it to take any more damage. Alright. Our opponent's deck is pretty win condition light. Okay, new plan. Just trying to think. If we wait for them to put a counter on the One Ring, that's probably better. We don't get to fire these lightning bolts off straight away because of the Teferi, but I think this is acceptable. Get a little bit of chip damage from this One Ring. Meticulous Archive. Sure. Put one card on top of their library. Now they are brainstorming. We don't get to do anything this turn because of the Teferi, so we can just sit through this turn and just let it happen. Helm of Obedience. Alright, so there is a win condition. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. We will play this one because this allows us to surveil with our lightning bolts. Let's have a little smash there. Pyroblast. What is that doing for us right now? It's not a lightning bolt, so that can go away. That is a lightning bolt. Okay, Hydroblast. That shuts down that little avenue. Are Daze not doing anything? Plowing our guy? Sure. Just trying to dodge the old rest in peace. Ponder? Sure. I wonder how many rest in peace they play. Maybe it's only like 2 and then like 1 Helm of Obedience. But that seems a little bit loose if that's your win condition. I don't know. It's interesting. Our opponent's deck looks like quite a lot of fun though. It's great just drawing cards, killing stuff. Assembling some weird little combos. Alright, that's the game. We can concede now and go to round 3. Yeah, like, again, it's the control deck with just all the removal spells that's going to be jamming us up. Like, the first round, our opponent was slightly bigger, and we did mulligan a lot. This one, we managed to win the multi-4, but we just couldn't quite get past all of their removal post-board. Alright, let's go to round 3. Alright, we have a keepable 7. It's been a while, so let's jam in with this one. We can DRC into Bauble with Daze backup on turn 1. That's pretty solid. Right, our opponent's cracking their Polluted Delta. A Watery Grave. So Death Shadow Ahoy. And this is going to grow. We can Unholy Heat this later on. Do we want to just get this over and done with right now? Is the question. Because it gets harder the longer this goes on. So I think I'm going to Unholy Heat this. I don't want to get Wastelanded, obviously. But we're saving the Bauble because it's really good with Channelers. Swamp cycling a Troll of Khazad-dûm. Are they going to get a basic or are they going to get a non-basic? Alright, Underground Sea. But they are playing the Wasteland and they're hitting us with the Wasteland. So that was the thing we didn't want to happen, obviously. If we just draw another land like a boss? No. Are we Wastelanding our opponent here? What else are we doing? I think we have to play this Bauble now. A Snuff Out. Okay. Yeah, sure. I think we just try and slow our opponent down if they've got any Murktides or anything. Makes it hard for them to double spell. Okay, they're reanimating a Troll of Khazad-dûm. We have no interaction for this. That's not the one, is it? Okay. This troll is going to be somewhat challenging for us to kill. And it's kind of gone beyond the realms of us racing this either. So we're going to have a bit of a tricky time here. Alright, it's our turn. Do we have any action here? No. We're just going to get clocked in a couple of turns. I think we can just safely say goodbye to this one. Like, our outs there are non-existent, so... Alright, Grafdigger's Cage. That seems like a place where I would like to be. Blood Moon's typically pretty good against the Death Shadow decks as a general rule. Pyroblast has text, but a lot of their threats tend to be black these days, so not always where you want to be. Brazen Borrower can bounce out something they've reanimated, which is important. So we need to keep our removal spells. What are we looking at getting rid of here? Actually, I don't think I want the Blood Moons. I think we just want to have the Murktide Regents and have them reliably castable. I'm not a big lover of Force of Negation. Like, the main things you want to counterspell are creatures and the card Reanimate. So I think having the Force of Negation isn't necessary here. I do like the Counterbalance. Daze on the play, obviously very good. What are we fitting in these cages for? I think we can trim a Bauble, possibly 2 Baubles actually, since we're bringing 3 artifacts. Although, do we need 3 cages? This isn't like a full Reanimate matchup. Alright. I convinced myself 2 cages is fine. Like, if they are running Murktides, then we can do that, but I don't necessarily think they are. Sure, we have Delver, we have Force of Will, we've got some removal spells for little guys. The hope here is we don't get Wastelanded again, but our opponent shouldn't Wasteland us if we've got a threat in play, as a general rule. And, you know, you play Delver, you're going to keep some hands that are a little bit sketchy to Wasteland sometimes, because you can just cantrip your way through it most of the time. Considering we have these lightning bolts as well, there's no way I'm getting a basic island here. I want to cast my spells. Right, let's play good old classic Delver of Secrets. A Wasteland. Are we doing this again? Alright, we're going to attacks. We found a land, so that's nice for us. So this is probably just going to be a Wasteland that cycles for a swamp off of a troll. That's what I'm expecting to see here. Right, there it is. Swamp cycling. So we're going to pitch the Force to the Force and have the Murktide Regent as a follow-up. That is the plan here. I'm assuming they're going to try and reanimate their troll around a Daze. Sure. I don't really want to deal with this. So we could get a Thundering Footfalls right now, which I think is better than using this to siphon a card that way, because this gives us more Murktide fuel. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Okay, I just actually want that card as a thing. We're not going to flip the Delver, but this card is good. Goes nicely with our large dragon. Right, we're cracking for 1. We're in a reasonable position. We don't have any counter magic, but now if our opponent starts doing troll stuff, like they reanimate a troll, they're taking a relatively significant life total hit, and we have potentially 6 power in hand and 6 damage in play. So we have a 2-turn clock. Sorry, 6 damage in hand here. Right, Roar to Grave, they're taking some damages. Fatal pushing our Channeler. Okay, I would like to get some Surveil action going here. A Wasteland. We're not about that life. I can go into the grave. Stalactite Stalker, sure. We have a Lightning Bolt if we want this. Oh, they're starting to Wasteland us now. Interesting. That's going to stop us from being able to deploy a Murktide Regent. But we can Lightning Bolt this away. What have we got? A Ponder. Yes, we'll reveal that. I would like to Ponder and try and hit a land, especially when our opponent doesn't have the option of Orcish Bowmasters. We did find a land. We also found a Daze and a Counterbalance. I don't really want this Counterbalance or the Daze that much. But they're fine. I think we'll put the Daze down next, so we have the Daze when we're trying to cast our Murktide Regent. So if we Lightning Bolt this now, we are leaving ourselves open to Daze. But if we don't, then they can always just... this is a tricky one. Are we doing this now? Yes, I think we are going to bolt this now and see if it gets there. Alright, it does. Okay, cool. That means our Murktide can be pretty large. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can make a 7/7. Not full size, but pretty good still. A Brainstorm from our opponent. Something like Death Shadow is pretty potent here. Right, so we get this Daze here. So we can attempt the Murktide with Daze back up. We need to win before our opponent gets to leverage all 4 of the cards in their hand, basically. Right. Get rid of our instants and sorceries. And then just whatever. Make sure we keep as many times as we can there. Alright, our Murktide is just in. So that's a lethal threat on its own. So Snuff Out is pretty awkward for them here. Orcish Bowmasters. Do I care about Orcish Bowmasters? Is this Daze getting any better is the next question. So they could have a hard cast Snuff Out on our Murktide Regent. So I think we're going to save the Daze in case that's what happens. Because they obviously can't pitch cast the Snuff Out. Right, we're cycling a Street Wraith. There's a Wasteland. A Doughty Voidwalker. That doesn't stop anything happening here. If we play the Counterbalance first, they just act in response, so it doesn't really make a difference. This way we can Daze paying around. Daze, address down. Alright, so we got that game. Excellent. I like how I sideboarded there. Our opponent did show us loads of black threats, so I'm happy to not have these Pyroblasts. I think I'm more into the Blood Moon than I thought I was. Maybe. Like, the Dazes get a lot worse here, so I think we're cutting a couple of Dazes. Do we want to have some Force of Negations? I think I'd rather have another Borrower here. Just trying to think, do I want a Daze or a Force here? I think a single Force is better than a single Daze for the most part. Right, we're going to go in like this, I think. We could always just have the Bauble instead of the Force here, so we're more likely to get Delirium and get in the sky. Yeah, I can get down with that. Because we want to get Delirium, because we want our Unholy Heats to be able to kill the Troll of Khazad-dûm when the time comes. We've got Lightning Bolts. We've got Ponder. I think we'll keep this. So we can deal with a little Stalker. Although they're unlikely to play a Stalker since they didn't have a fetch. Alright, you can have a look at our hand. It's relatively fine against Grief. Now, if they just reanimate the Grief, then sure, then they get some pretty good value there. But our hand isn't... Like, they can't take all of our Lightning Bolts. So if they just reanimate the Grief and we bolt it, that ends up more or less a bit of a wash. So the one issue we have here is they could have a Daze. So if we just bolt straight up, that's not great. So I'm going to offer up this Ponder, I think. Yep, so there's the Daze that we suspected. So we're going to Bauble now because it gets around. But I guess we don't need to do it right now. But we might as well get some more cards. We might get a blue card. Okay, dismember on our opponent's side. Yep, so we were correct for playing around the Daze. We've got a land so we can play around Daze now. There's that Warrior Grave again, lowering their life total, getting into Dragon's Rage. Sorry, not Dragon's Rage Channeler. Death Shadow range there. What's like about this? No Stifles? No Stifles. We're going to get this Ponder going before some sort of Bowmasters comes down. A Blood Moon is nice, but doesn't do anything without the mana. I think this is an any order shuffle situation. Polluted Delta. Okay, happy to see that. Like, the way we get ruined this game is if our Murktide Regent either isn't good enough or we can't cast it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can make the full-size Murktide that won't die to Dismember. And if they reanimate the Troll, then they take one shot from Murktide to die. No Death Shadow from our opponent. So we've got land to play around Daze. We know one of our opponent's cards. So let's make a Murktide. Let's make it as big as we can. Do I want to crack this land and get a Ponder, or do I want... Yeah, I think that's not the correct thing to do if we Ponder here. Because if they've got Bowmasters, they get some extra pings. I think I'm just going to Thundering Fall to Murktide Regent. Am I about that life? No, I think we want Lightning Bolt, basically, or Unholy Heat. I don't mind pondering into a Bowmasters a little bit later, but I don't want to just throw away a bunch of position here. Right, is the big dragon going to get us there? Scalding Tarn from our opponent. A Death Shadow. A Stalactite Stalker. Interesting. Opponent's got one card in hand and we know what it is. So I think we're going to Brainstorm first. Looking for Lightning Bolt. We did not find Lightning Bolt. We did find another threat though. So I'm okay with that. And we can hold up Force of Will here. So we put Bauble and Ponder. So the Delver will definitely flip. Then we play the Delver. And then if our opponent dismembers, so we're not attacking here because this can go awry for us. So if they dismember our Delver of Secrets to pay the life to make their shadow bigger, we can counterspell that and then block with the Delver and just crash once with the Murktide. Alright, so we have perfect information of our opponent's hand. We'll float some mana. We're not going to do anything with it, but send a message. No attacks from our opponent there. So they can use this to minus our creature. They sacrifice their Stalker. Right, so we draw this Ponder. We're looking for a Lightning Bolt here. A Blood Moon isn't what we're looking for. Let's shuffle. Grafdigger's Cage. That's not a terrible draw here. I don't think they're going to be doing any reanimate shenanigans, but it just turns reanimate off as a thing. Actually, does it still resolve when they gain their life or not? I can't remember. So if we attack with just this, so we attack with both things, they can dismember here to kill this. If they pay life, so they basically can't pay life for the dismember if we attack with just the Murktide. They can use this Stalker to kill this, and then they can hit us for 12, but how do we lose from there? Alright, we'll put our opponent to 1. Alright, this Force of Will. So they have a 12-12, so they can hit us for 12. We can block here. If they dismember this, we can counterspell it and then block. I guess we can lose to Daze doing it this way. A Ponder. So we know they have a Dismember in hand. So if we just Force of Will this, they can't win the game. Because they can't cast this Dismember now. They can't activate this. We've got a chump block here. We've got Lethal Threat in the sky. Unless I've somehow lost track and it isn't the Dismember they have. We saw this ages ago. I don't think they brainstormed it away either. I think that was after the brainstorm. Might be wrong though. Oh dear, have I messed this one up? No. Okay, so they did have the Dismember in hand and we did get the match. Alright, so we've put a win on the board now, so let's continue and see if we can get a couple more. Alright, we will keep this hand. Let's play a Delver and use our Mishra's Bauble to hopefully flip it. If I'm familiar with how this trick works, I will show you in a second. So we play the Delver, then we play the Bauble, and then we target ourselves in our opponent's turn. So we get to see the card, then we get to choose whether we draw from the Bauble first or we flip the Delver first. So we get 2 looks at it. They ponder from our opponents. Alright, they're pitching a Grief here. So they can have a little look at our hand. We have multiple answers to a Grief if they reanimate it though. They're probably just going to take the Lightning Bolt here because it's the most flexible, unless they're planning on doing some sort of Troll of Khazad-dûm type nonsense. But that won't come this turn. Right, so now we target ourselves. There is a land on top, so we want to draw before this. So we put the Delver trigger on the bottom. Then we draw this land, and then Delver has a chance to flip. Brainstorm. There we go. Exactly as we drew it up. I would like to move around at least one of these Murktide Regents. Okay, we'll attack. We'll deploy another Delver. Try and get some threats going, get some damage coming. Because like if they reanimate this Grief, they take 4, which is not nothing. And then they're also looking at losing... Okay, so the Bowmasters is pretty good here and just takes out a Delver. Sure. But again, we got our Brainstorm out of the way now, so that's not too bad. We have an answer for this if we need it. Our opponent could have some sort of Daze available, so a land wouldn't be the worst here. There's a land. Alright, let's just make a large and in charge creature. Alright, a 5/5 is pretty reasonable. Like, we could have pondered or something first, but I'd rather make sure our Murktide resolves through a Daze. So we've got a 2-turn clock. And we do have this Lightning Bolt in hand, so we can fire this off if we get griefed or something. I like our position. But, you know, they could just have good old-fashioned destroy target creature somewhere. And Entomb, that's not great for us, though. It's going to be an Atraxa or an Archon. An Archon of Cruelty. Yeah, cruel is the right word there. Right, so they reanimate this and go to 6. So what is our play here? We lose this and we lose the Ponder. And then we try and draw a Brazen Borrower. Does that do anything here? It helps. Like, we're in trouble. We can attack this and then Lightning Bolt it. This goes into the graveyard. We do not require this. If I trade my Murktide for their Archon, that's not great for us. But if we don't, that's really bad for us. Okay, so our line now is to draw a Lightning Bolt. So they attack us. We lose our Force of Negation. We Lightning Bolt our opponent down to a smaller life total. Alright, we're just going to bolt them now, I think. This puts our opponent to 1. They'll go up to 4 again once they attack. We'll lose this Force of Negation from our hand. But if we draw a Lightning Bolt, we can win. So that's better than nothing. Imagine if I had a Stifle. That would be so sick. Alright. Stifle this trigger. Just kill them the crap back. Alright. We don't have that though, so we are now in the phase of the game where we have one draw step to draw the thing. We can ponder to look for it, but we can't brainstorm to look for it because of the Bowmasters. Alright. They've got a counter spell, then we lose, obviously. Dragon's Age Channeler is not it. Okay, so this is like the full-on Rescaminator list rather than like Scam or whatever. So this is where we want the 3 Grafdigger's cages. Okay, Brazen Borrower is reasonable. How do we feel about Pyroblasts? We're not really what we're worried about for the most part, so I don't think we want that. Though it could pivot into a Murktide Regent plan, but they're more likely to pivot into just like Dalthy Voidwalkers and things. So would I rather have a Daze or a Force of Negation here? Like, I like the counterbalances still. I think we do need the removal for Bowmasters and such. So maybe I'm not into this Force of Negation very much. And I think we can trim on a Ponder and a couple of Baubles here. We've got more artifacts that we can mill over with a Channeler anyway. We don't really want these when our opponent's Orcish Bowmastering us. Alright, this opener doesn't let us actually play the game. We can certainly stop what our opponent's doing, but I don't think that's good enough for us. This is better. And we'll keep this, and we'll throw back a Daze. We'll keep this because it helps us with Delirium. Right, let's Ponder. I would very much like this Dragon's Rage Channeler. And if we put the creature into the graveyard next turn with our trigger, that's going to be pretty good. But we don't want to draw the Channeler and have it removed. So I guess we do it this way round. So we draw... Oh no, I've done it the wrong way around there. Alright, I meant to put the land and the thing the other way around. Okay, so our Channeler is exposed. We should put an undo function on the old Ponder. Right, what is our opponent up to? A Wasteland. Is that what we're doing here? It is, apparently. Sure. We have another land. And there's a land on top, so we're not really missing anything out. Let's crack this. Get a Volk. Play our Channeler. Get our Bauble going. Let's do some milling. I do like having the Channeler here, but it is a creature for Delirium, so I think it's worth doing here. Because this also lets us dodge Orcish Bowmasters, which is coming soon. And we just get the clock started quicker. And we don't know when necessarily we'll be able to... I guess we have to Brainstorm then to make our guy 3/3. But I think it's better to get the triggers out of the way with right now and just give us more information, more cards to Brainstorm with, etc, etc. I don't really think... maybe we'll want that other Channeler, but... Engineer Explosives X equals 1. Alright, we'll say no to this one. Our opponent can obviously Daze back here, but then that takes 2 turns before they can crack it. Do I want this Force of Will? I think so. We'll take the Force. We can always move some cards around with the Brainstorm anyway. Back over to us. Right, so we have some choices. We can either just go get a Thundering Falls and just hold up Brainstorm Force of Will, or we could Brainstorm right now that we know that Bowmasters isn't getting us. I think I'd rather get the value from our Brainstorm. It does mean that our Force does require another blue card, but I think that's fine. Sure, we'll put that on top. And that's one of the blue cards we wanted. Then we get to bury a couple of lands here. And then we can shuffle them away next turn. So we're in an alright spot, but... You know, this game could drag on for a little bit, and our opponent can just Entomb, Reanimate, Archon of Cruelty. And if we don't have the right answer at the right time, then we're kind of knackered. What are you deploying? An Engineer Explosives where X equals 1, sure. They can't crack this until they have 2 mana, so we can bounce it and just waste another turn of their time. This is mainly to blow up things like Grafdigger's Cage from our opponent. Sure, you can Brainstorm. Right, so we can shuffle away some lands here. We can bounce this as a tempo play. Just keep beating away. I think that's pretty reasonable. Like, we can't really rely on Borrower as a threat because of the Bowmasters. If they have any way of like forcing that through using Forces or Dazes or whatever, we can kind of get jammed up. Right, let's bounce this. Explosives, get another Surveil going. Ponder. Ponder is an above average draw. But in the face of Bowmasters, is it what I want, is the question. We do have the Force for the Bowmasters, if that's what we're worried about. I think I'll leave that on top. I don't believe our opponent's going to fight over this, although it does feel good to counter the first half of Borrower, because then you'd have to worry about the back half. But they're not that worried about the back half while they've got this Bowmasters. So if they have a land, they can play and crack the Explosives, but that's their whole turn, and they're taking damage in the meantime. And the lower their life total gets, the worse Reanimate as a card gets. They probably still have Animate dead, though, which doesn't really care about their life total. Right, Swamp Cycling ahoy. There's a swamp, and there it is in play. Sure, you can play Explosives for 1 again. We're going to get to crack you for another 3 damage here. We're close to getting through our opponent's bits and pieces. Oh, misclicked and put extra lands in there. Whoops. Alright. Brainstorm isn't really what we want. Put that into the graveyard for now. We're looking for Murktides. There is a Murktide and a Daze. Alright, so we'll put this. Have a Daze and the Murktide. Say no. Attack our Channeler. This guy's got loads of damage gone. Like 9 damage this guy's got me. Not bad for a single red mana. Like, we've had to do a little bit of tempo-y stuff. But now we can remove some stuff. So, sorcery. Some instants. Do we want to keep Delirium on our Channeler is the question. Or do you just want a massive Murktide? I think I want a massive Murktide. We can force this through if our opponent's got some business. And we also like don't care about explosives as much anymore. A Daze. Do I care enough about this Murktide getting through? Yeah, I think we need this Murktide to close the game out. We have this Daze that we know about. Our opponent's mana is going to be a little bit taxed. Is Brazen Borrower plus Daze good enough to keep on top of our library? I think so. Can I have my Murktide, please? We cannot have our Murktide. No Murktides allowed. Okay. So our opponent's got a basic island, a Bowmasters, and a mystery card in hand. But now our Dragon's Rage Channeler is once again a 3/3. So if our opponent wants to blow it up, then they don't get their Bowmasters this turn, but they don't really want the Bowmasters turn because they want to use it to kill our 3/1 flyer when the time comes. There's that island again. Alright, they're going to crack this at instant speed in our turn. That's reasonable. We're going to say goodbye to our Channeler here. Looks like we are. No Stifle available. Sad times. Alright, now we have this Borrower that looks really bad in the face of Bowmasters, unless our opponent taps out to make our Daze work. If we can get one hit in with it, I'll take that. If we have like the option to counterspell the Bowmasters. Our opponent can obviously play around the Daze and just take the hit, but then they'll take 6, which is... Okay, so we're not going to play this out into the known Bowmasters here. I think, what's the top card of our library? I can't remember now. Is it a land? I think it's a Misty Rainforest. Okay, so this gives us a Thundering Footfalls, so we can get a little bit of value. Our opponent doesn't want to play the Bowmasters until we play the Borrower. Unless they have 2 Bowmasters, then they're just going to jam us up. Wow, they're just playing it. That's interesting. Does that mean they've got a second Bowmasters? That's kind of what that implies. Polluted Delta. Right, our Daze is just not going to be doing anything for us now. Underground Sea. What would you like to do to us, opponent? A Douthie Voidwalker, you say? Sure. This lets us play the Borrower and have our Daze be a functional Magic the Gathering card. Right, so they're going to bash for 2 here. Like, we could have cracked in response, but we don't know if we have to pay around a Daze. And I'd also rather have our Borrower come in at end step. So our opponent has gone more into like the scam plan. If this resolves, we will Thundering Footfalls. Again, so we can pay around a Daze. We're going to keep this Misty Rainforest uncracked. Alright, so now we get Thundering Footfalls. They should have waited for this. It might not have made a difference, but you never know. Thundering Falls, not Thundering Footfalls. This goes into our graveyard because it's rubbish. And it's our turn. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. It will be Delirious, so this will be a lethal threat. Our opponent has 1 card in hand, and we have 6 damage in the air. Have we managed to work our way around to winning this one? They could reanimate an Orcish Bowmasters, but that would still kill them to the Dragon's Rage Channeler. Although, actually no, they could... Yeah, they could reanimate an Orcish Bowmasters, ping our Brazen Borrower, and then play our Brazen Borrower from the Douthie Voidwalker. Right. That's not what they're doing. But they're keeping their Bow Boys back because of our 3/3 Dragon's Rage Channeler. I guess I would probably block the Bowmasters, but not the token. Alright, they scooped it up, so we get to go to a game 3. Do I like how I sideboarded? Yes. Do I feel we need these Wastelands as much in this matchup? They've got a lot of basics. We could trim these and have a little bit more action. Like a couple of Force of Negations. Seems pretty reasonable to me. Right, let's try that. More flips for our Delvers. Alright, this hand looks pretty serviceable. Lots of threats. We're potentially going to be a little bit sketch around like reanimate lines here, but we do have a Daze that we can do some stuff with. We'll keep this. So which threat we play out is kind of interesting because we do want to try and reduce their life total quickly to shut off reanimate as a viable line. So playing the Delver is more likely to result in hitting our opponent for 3 on turn 2. But playing the Channeler means that we get some free value going. Interesting. I think I am on the Delver train here. We just need to try and make sure our opponent doesn't have that much wiggle room to reanimate stuff with their life total. What are we going to see here? We're just going to cycle and then get this troll back. Yeah, you're seeing why Wasteland is not very effective against our opponent. Right, he didn't do anything with that in their end step. Okay. So if they cast a Entomb, we can't do anything about that. But if they cast a follow-up spell, then we can. An Orcish Bowmasters. This is worth a counterspell. Now our opponent can obviously Daze back here, but it is what it is. So the other option was just to let this happen. And then just play 2 Channelers. So I think is a reasonable option to do. We do have the Lightning Bolt for the Bowmasters, but I kind of wanted to keep our pressure because the Spectre of Reanimate hangs over us while they have life total. Okay, let's jam a Channeler. We have Force of Will to back this up. Next turn we can... do we care about them Force of Willing our Channeler? No. We want to Force of Will the scary thing that gets us. We've got another Channeler. We can Channeler and Bolt the Bowmasters. And we're getting close to Delirium here. Like they might have boarded out a big chunk of their Reanimate package. But that's why this blue-black Rescaminate deck is so good, because you have to respect it at all times, that it could just go and get an Arcane of Cruelty and kill you. Or whatever. So it's quite awkward to play. It's a bit like Cephalid Breakfast, actually, where you have to respect the combo and then you sometimes just die to the fair plan. Alright, opponents, what would you like to do? They would like to grief us, pitching a Troll of Khazad-dûm. Do I counterspell this or not? I don't think so. I think we just let this hit. Right, they might just give us a Murktide to cast if they take some stuff. Like if they reanimate. So what they could do here is they could take our Force of Will, then reanimate and take our Lightning Bolt. That's pretty strong. But if we Force of Will, then we end up in the same place but with 1 less card. The play patterns around grief aren't great for the people being griefed. That's pretty much the gist of it. They could reanimate our Dragon's Rage Channeler and have a 3-3. But then they know we have the Lightning Bolt. But our opponent's nearly out of cards here. So if we can survive this turn of our opponent's... Alright, it's gone for the Murktide. Sure. We've got Reanimate over there. No, you not. Okay, they have 1 mystery card. What could it be? Could be a Daze. Could just be a cantrip. Could be a removal spell. Could just be like a blank card. Just a land that they don't really want to do anything with. That would be nice. Right, we've got land. We'll play the one they've seen. We'll play our Dragon's Rage Channeler. We'll crack this for a Volcanic Island. And the question is, if they have an Orcish Bowmaster, we want to do this proactively so that we don't get killed by the next one. So I think we have to do this now in an attempt to try and flip this guy. Like that's fine. It's not a threat, but it kind of deals with some of the stuff we're worried about. Sure, I'll leave this on top. We just need to find a Murktide, put the Big Daddy in, and have a good time. So we have Force of Will and a mystery card from our opponent's point of view. A Dalthy Voidwalker. Sure. We have a Lightning Bolt for this. That's fine. And maybe the Lightning Bolt can flip. I'm not blocking here. Right, let's Lightning Bolt this. See if we can get some Delirium going. A land, we don't want that. Right, let's get a Thundering Falls and see if we can get some Delirium this way. Yes, we can. Put into your graveyard. Wait. Where is it? Oh, did I just fat fingers that and click the wrong... Alright, I was pretty sure I put that into click graveyard, but I must have missed. Oh dear, I'm having a lot of dexterity fails today, unfortunately. I'm recording at a different time than I normally do, so clearly my brain is not happy. Alright, what are we going to see here? If they Orcish Bowmaster's here, I'm going to feel pretty annoyed. It's not an Orcish Bowmaster, it's a true name Nemesis, which is a problem. But it's a problem that we might be able to overcome. Don't really have great ways of removing this, but a Murktide races that like nobody's business. Our opponent is Hellbent. Yeah, okay, I just fat fingers and clicked the wrong button. Great. Okay. A Brainstorm is better than an average card. Put this on top of my library. I will have a look at the top card of our opponent's library. It's a Troll of Khazad-dûm. So we don't care about that one. So that we know that we can use this Brainstorm without having to worry about our Force of Will not being castable. Right, so we draw the Brainstorm here. I don't think we're brainstorming in our opponent's turn here. It doesn't really make sense. Like, they've got a 4-turn clock. And we've got a 4-turn clock. But a single line of bolt, and we are ahead. And we know that our opponent's just drawn a blank. Well, it's not a total blank, because they're going to go get the Surveil land, so they're going to get a tiny bit of value here. Yeah, there is. But for the state of the game, it's fine. We want to see this Surveil. Okay, they left it on top. That's not ideal for us. That kind of worries me in terms of what we're doing with our Force of Will, because we're going to want to Force of Will something else probably. But I think we do need to Brainstorm, because if we're not finding some more action, we're not winning this game. A Counterbalance is a pretty good piece of action. I think we're still brainstorming though. I think the Force of Will might be better here. Ponder. Sure, put that on top because we can always use that to shuffle away. Let's put these two away. Let's Ponder. It's into the graveyard. Murktide Regent. That's what we're after. We can't play it this turn, unfortunately. So, doesn't matter which way we put these down. Not really. We want the Brazen Borrower, I think, as well. So we go Murktide, float this on top, and then we have the Brazen Borrower here. So our plan is we take 4 this turn, counterspell whatever they do. We go to 5, and then we play the Murktide, and that can crush through for the final points of damage. Yeah, we take 4, we go to 6. Force of Will puts us to 5. It's getting tight, but these games are always going to be quite tight. Sheoldred's Edict. How big is our Murktide Regent? Not big enough to kill in one swing, so we are counterspelling this. Put on top of library. Let's make sure I click the right way, otherwise we will lose the game. Right, attack for 3. Let's get Big Daddy Mercs going. So let's get rid of some instants here. We can keep Delirium as well. How many sorceries do we have? Just the 1 sorcery. Okay, so we don't really need to make it any bigger than it is. Yeah, 7/7 is big enough. So our opponent's got 1 draw step to find something. We can take 3 damage this turn and be okay. We beat a Sheoldred's Edict here. A Ponder. Alright, that's a good way to find the card they need. We want to see a shuffle here. The fact they're taking some time on it means it might be like another cantrip, and they're working out if they have the mana to do that. They chose not to shuffle. That's devastating news for us. Okay, it was the cantrip line, so I did predict our opponent correctly. So they get to see 1 additional card here. But that 1 additional card is kind of pretty much the same as just shuffling and drawing a fresh one. But we don't know if there's other cards there that are... if they have a combination of them, it's better. It could have been a couple of cantrips, so they could Brainstorm, and then they could then cast a Ponder afterwards and have a land. You know, we don't know what is in there. But when we're sort of hands off the wheel, it's good to speculate about things, because we haven't got much else to do other than hope for the best here. We're not dead to Bowmasters either, because we can Murktide Regent to block the Orc army. Alright, a Ponder. This is reducing the amount of outs our opponent has, because they're going to have less mana to work with. Alright, we got the match. Yeah, that was a really good set of games there. Pretty annoyed about my dexterity fail with the Mishra's Bauble, but we did get there in the end. We could have Got there a little bit more comfortably if we didn't misclick that. But yeah. Okay, one more round to go. Let's see if we can get the 3-2. Alright, we're on the play for the final round. We've got a classic Delver into more Delvers with a Daze back up. Our opponent's mulliganed. Alright. We could get a basic island here. Honestly, looking at our hand, I quite like the basic island on this particular occasion. Now, that can come back to bite us later on, but I want to be able to just play the things we've got going right now. Underground Sea. We're getting scammed again. Do I care about our opponent's Delver? Not especially. So we're probably looking at a Grixis Delver matchup here. Play Wasteland. Go to attacks. See if they want to trade here. I think I'm okay with this trade. That's why I'm offering it. They do have the better art of the classic, aren't they? Delver. Let's mess with their mana base because that's what our hand does relatively effectively here. We don't have a Brainstorm at the moment, so it's not like we get to put them back. Are they going to flip here? They did not flip. Okay. That could mean another land. We get a little bit more joy with our Wasteland. So now they're offering us the trade. I'm not going to take it. we got two guys. If we can flip these, we're going to be in a solid spot. What does this one do? Missed. We missed on them both. That is a damn shame. We could ponder here, or we could just slam a counterbalance and just change the entire texture of the game. We've got Daze to support it as well. Our opponent's cracking their Polluted Delta. You see a Brainstorm here? We are going to see a Brainstorm. Don't want this Brainstorm to resolve, or don't want to counterspell the thing that they counterspell. If they Daze here and set themselves back a land, that's pretty good, because we can then Daze their Daze. They Force of Will, and that's a pretty big hit of getting 2 cards out for this one Daze. Our opponent is dazing. I will Daze and I'll throw back our Volcanic so we can't get hit by a Wasteland. Quite a big fight we're having. This card just changes how the game functions in a fundamental way for our opponent. And we're going to have a lot of similar CMC cards because our decks are going to be not the same throughout, but very similar. Alright, so they set up the Brainstorm for this Insectile Aberration. Right, they've got a Ponder over there. Yeah, so yeah, the Brainstorm made sure they could flip the guy. If we can flip our guys, then we've got an enormous clock. Command deck. Help me out. Force of Negation. Yes, please. Let's attack with our friends. Just waste them. A Stifle. That's what's on top of our library. A Volcanic Island. Okay. We don't get to Stifle. We don't get to Wasteland. That's fine. So we're keeping our Force of Negation for anything super spooky that we need to deal with. Right, Wasteland, we get to ignore that. Are they attacking? Or are they blocking? They know we're drawing basically a blank. So, not bad for them. Do I want the option of drawing Wasteland, or do I want to play around a Daze here? Play around a Daze. We're going to Ponder here. They can Wasteland in response. But we'll float red mana. Actually looking for a Lightning Bolt here. Or an Unholy Heat. This could be a Orcish Bowmasters. Or Orcish Bowmasters. Please go into the counterbalance. There's a Mishra's Bauble on top of our library. That is not what I want. This is no good. Alright, Murktide Regent though. That is a good one. So we lose our little friend here. Are we forcing damage or are we blocking? I think we're blocking this turn. And then we can Murktide. How big will it be? Not that big. We've had a lot of Wastelands instead of like actual spells that are useful. Like, you know, Wastelands are fine, but they're not really doing what we need. Float blue. Make him wander. I don't think I'm trading out my Insectile Aberration here. Another Wasteland. We've got Ponder going into our counterbalance. Unholy Heat on top of our library. That's not a bad one. So we could slam a Murktide, or we could Unholy Heat their Delver, bash for 3, then we take 3, then we play the Murktide, which will be lethal. I think that's probably our best bet here. Although The one danger here is that Wasteland can take us off of our things. So if we get one of these spells, we want it to be the Murktide, actually. I've changed my mind. Right, we've got a 5/5. Hopefully this counterbalance will do what it needs to. Mishra's Bauble. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to use a counterbalance here. I don't want our opponent to know what's on top of our library, and that's what they're using this Mishra's Bauble for. It's a test. So yes, our opponent does get to draw an additional card here. But I suppose they get to look at our card with the Mishra's Bauble anyway. Yeah, that was a bit loose. Alright, they're wastelanding us. Don't think they're attacking here. I'm drawing a card here. We're drawing a card that we can't cast. We'll attack with the 5/5. Mishra's Bauble. Well, this time I guess we are flipping it because they can just look anyway. It's another Dragon's Rage Channeler, so another blank. But our opponent drew a Mishra's Bauble, which in itself is a blank. What do they need here? They can't Snuff Out. They can't Fatal Push. We don't know if our opponent's running Grixis or if they're just running straight up blue-black either. Alright, we managed to get there. Okay, so what do we want here? So our opponent's shown us Delvers. There's probably Murktides in there as well, so this makes me want these Pyroblasts. How do I feel about Blood Moon? That is an interesting proposition. It might be... The problem is we want to be doing Murktide stuff, but that can stop our opponent's Murktides coming down. So there's definitely some use there. Delver, though. I don't think we want Daze on the play. We can trim this Force of Negation as well. That gets us Pyroblast and a couple of Blood Moons. And then do we want a Brazen Borrower here? I do like Brazen Borrower here. We'll trim a Force of Will for a Brazen Borrower, and then we'll kind of reappraise the situation afterwards. Our opponent hasn't shown us any red mana, so I don't know if we're supposed to board in these Hydroblasts. Alright, we'll go in like this. We could always trim a Wasteland as well, because they're not that exciting. But sometimes they can do some lifting. And, you know, getting the free game sometimes is worth it. What does our hand do? We ponder into Counterbalance. That's kind of a game warping effect, but we're not really applying pressure. We don't really have removal. But I don't want to reduce the amount of cards we have in a matchup that's very resource dependent. So we're going to see how this fares for us. Scalding Tarn. Okay, they are playing like Dragon Rage Channels and stuff. Alright, that was certainly a possibility. Yeah, I'll play this land out, I suppose. And we'll start pondering. We want to get our ponders out of the way before Bowmasters becomes a thing they can do. Murktide Regent is fine, but I need some removal basically. So let's try and get some removal. Okay, that's good. And I will be firing off this Bauble now. We just want more cards in hand before Bowmasters is a thing. Okay, they've got a Daze, that's good. We know to play around that now. Well, we were going to play around it anyway, but now it's confirmed. Right, a Murktide. Maybe that's a thing we can play soon and then slam the Blood Moon and hope that that sort of shuts the door. Our opponent is unlikely to have any basic lands in their deck. Right, no ponders in our opponent's hand. Now, we know our opponent plays Stifle, so I don't want to play out our fetch lands. We want to use our opponent's mana on their turn with our Lightning Bolt here. This is going to be an Orcish Bowmasters, I feel. Is that better or worse for us than the Dragon's Rage Channeler? Oh no, it's just a Thundering Falls. Okay, that's fine. That is A-okay. They've been the Bowmasters. In our opponent's upkeep, we will hit this Channeler now. So if they bounce a land to Daze, then that's obviously going to set them back a little bit. So we know they've got a Daze, so we do Counterbalance around Daze, followed by maybe Murktide, and then the Blood Moon. And we sort of use that as the big hammerlock at the end. I'd love to see like a double Daze from our opponent. That'd be quite a fun one for us. Now, Blood Moon isn't like a complete shut door in this matchup, because they do have some red spells. But it shuts off Murktides, it shuts off Bowmasters. It does quite a lot of work. It shuts off all of their cantrips. So it's well worth getting into play. Okay. They could play a Murktide this turn, but it wouldn't be a very big one. Okay. Our opponent only has one source of black mana. The chances are our opponent has access to an Orcish Bowmasters here. Let's see how they feel about this Counterbalance. Now they can get a pretty awkward Stifle exchange here, so maybe we're supposed to play out the Wasteland there. But I would like the option of getting a Thundering Falls going. Okay, Pyroblast. That's A-okay. That's one less Pyroblast for our Murktide Regent. Which is the biggest thing that either of us can do in this matchup, is play the Giant Dragon. Alright, they're cracking their Scalding Tarn. They're going to get a second Black Source, perhaps. They are. Here comes their Murktide. How big is it? They've got 2 things to exile. We've got 2 things to exile. So we're going to end up with similar sized Murktides. Alright, so there is a 4-4. An Unholy Heat does the work for us here as well. Let's crack this. You got Stifle over there, opponent? They do not. Thundering Falls. Help me out. A Delver of Secrets. Is that good enough here? I don't think so. We'll put it on the bottom. A Pyroblast, you say? That's quite exciting. Let's Pyroblast this Murktide Regent. And let's play this and play our own Murktide Regent. So we're getting somewhere. And this will be... Oh, we don't want to exile our Counterbalance. That's a rare type. So we get rid of this Ponder, this Lightning Bolt, this Pyroblast. And then we get rid of the land. And then it's probably, after that... Creature is the easiest type of those to get in. Alright, so we can play around this Daze that we know our opponent's got. And then hopefully next time we can just slam this Blood Moon, and if they don't have an answer for it right there and then, we can hopefully just do some attacking and win the game. Alright, we're in with our Murktide. They could have another Pyroblast here. That would obviously be disappointing for us. Lightning Bolt to our face. Okay, so our opponent is doing that to put a Murktide into play. So their Murktide will be smaller than our Murktide. So that's something. Alright. We've got a hand that doesn't do a great deal. Alright, we're going to attack with our Murktide. They can trade Murktide and a Lightning Bolt for our Murktide, and I'm okay to allow that to happen. We'll play this out. And 1, 2, 3... play a Blood Moon. It's kind of the reason we're playing Izzet Delver. The reason people do play Izzet Delver is for the power of Blood Moon, but we're not going to get there with it. Okay. So we got a Delver. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand and it's Daze. But if they attack, they put us to 10, but then we attack and can potentially put them to 2. We don't have another Thundering Falls here, which is a shame. We just take our damage here and see what our opponent's follow-up is. Something like an Orcish Bowmaster would be pretty strong. Ugh. That is a very, very good draw from our opponent there. Yikes. Okay. What are you going to find us, Delver of Secrets? Ponder. Sure. We'll flip our Delver of Secrets. I'll cast this Ponder. Dragon's Rage Channeler, Delver of Secrets, Scalding Tarn. These cards aren't very good, is the truth of the matter. So if we attack for 3, we take 5. And then we can attack for 6. And that's not good enough. So we need to any order and shuffle. Lightning Bolt. That's not great either. We can double block here, but I don't think that's going to result in us winning the game. Yeah, I mean block and bolt. So it's not really a double block, but you know what I mean. I think we're better off trying to dig to an Unholy Heat or a Brazen Borrower. Something like that. Now we might have to do that play next turn. Pyroblast. See, this is exactly why we didn't do that. Let's see if we can Pyroblast away their scary threat. They can't hard cast a Force of Will. They can pitch cast it. There's nothing we can do if they have that. If this doesn't resolve, then we have to hold back on blocks and try and bolt it with the block as well. Alright, that's an excellent exchange for us and might put us into a position where we can win this game. So we've got a Lightning Bolt, so we can answer some things if we need to, but we also only need to connect one more time before our Lightning Bolt becomes lethal. Delver of Secrets, that's fine. Our opponent's got 2 cards in hand. One of them is a Daze. Flooded Strand. Just connect. Then we can Lightning Bolt our opponent. They have 1 card in hand. Let's see if it's good enough. Alright, we got the win there. Wowzers. That was an absolute slog of a league, if I'm being honest with you. we had a bit of everything there. We had the mulligan into Oblivion a few times. We had a Dexterity misclick. We had a missequence Ponder from me. We had some great draws. We had some bad draws. Everything you could want from a league, right? All right, let's talk about the deck. So the first question that springs to my mind with this deck is, why are we playing this deck over Grixis Delver? Because Orcish Bowmasters is obviously one of the better cards in the format. And we're losing the ability to play that by just playing 2 colors. We do gain Thundering Falls, and we do gain Blood Moon. Now, Blood Moon, when Blood Moon's going to be good, then we're definitely going to be able to leverage it here quite nicely. However, not having the Bowmasters feels not great. The other option, of course, is to play the Rug Delver, and you can go heavily into Rug Delver, like full on, you know, Stifles and actual green spells, or you can play the more common build at the moment, which is the one that just splashes for the Questing Druid. So you're not really trying to cast the Questing Druid that much. It's just card advantage. And basically that gets some card advantage in place of something like Counterbalance. Now, Counterbalance to me isn't that impressive. I've not been amazed by this card in our shell. Like, if we've got all of our cantrips and stuff and we can set it up, then yeah, it becomes very useful. But if we're sort of down to nothing, we've got this Counterbalance. I'd much rather be in a situation where I've got some Questing Druids and I can go, oh, okay, so I just get to draw 2 more cards and just, you know, keep fueling. It's kind of like the fire design thing of just keep going, keep adding cards, keep playing these powerful things and moving the game forward, whereas Counterbalance doesn't always do that. And we don't have the best resources to manipulate that. Like, I have seen someone playing Scrollrack with it lately, which is kind of wild. But we're just relying on Brainstorms, Ponders, and Dragon's Rage Channeler. But like, if we've got all these sorts of things, we maybe don't even need the Counterbalance anyway, because we've already got like all the things we want and some tools. So, like, you know, don't get me wrong, Counterbalance is great in the mirror and stuff like that. But sometimes, to me, it just feels like you're adding an extra random element of variance into your deck with what's on top of your library sometimes. And that kind of scares me a little bit, when we could just be playing more efficient things that kind of get to do things. Yes, obviously, Questing Druid is drawing you 2 random cards. But if you're casting your opponent's turn, the way your deck's comprised, you'll be able to play these cards all the time, unless you have like double land, and in which case that's 2 lands you're not drawing. So I think I would rather be playing the Rug build with the Questing Druids. I think that is generally a more powerful approach. I've seen somebody playing one with some Force of Negation's main deck and Questing Druid, and that looks quite nice to me. But yeah, this deck is fine. It does the Delver things. This is a lot colder to Graveyard Hate as well than some of the other decks. So like Questing Druid, you can just play Questing Druid, put a few cannons on it, you've got a good threat. Or, you know, Orcish Bowmasters isn't an amazing threat, but it's just another body that can deal damage in the Grixis build. And we don't have that here. So I think this deck is fine. I think, you know, if you play it, you know, you're playing Delver, right? You're playing a good deck. You're sort of tinkering in the margins. This isn't the way that I would personally want to tinker in the margins. I think I would rather have some card advantage than something like a Counterbalance. And that the Questing Druid one can still play Blood Moon in the board because it doesn't really care about the green that much, so you still have your 1 island. So there's definitely an element of preference when it comes to Delver builds. I quite like the Grixis build because it runs like a couple of Stifles, which are pretty interesting in the format right now, stifling like Leyline Binding triggers or Storm triggers, Wasteland, whatever. So I think there's definitely merit for playing a blue-red Delver deck like this, but it's not quite how I like to approach Delver, so it's not really what I would like to sleeve up to play in an event. But you certainly can, and if this deck won like a challenge or whatever, it wouldn't surprise you. It's just running a bunch of good cards, right? This is a known shell. It's very good. We're just sort of tinkering in the margins, really. And with that, I think we're done for the day. So it's been a bit of a long one, so thanks for sticking with me. Remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.